Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The company lobby gleamed under the cold fluorescent lights, every corner impeccably tidy, a perfect reflection of a rigid and authoritarian administration. Clara Whitman, the director, adjusted her black blazer and cast a condescending glance over the files spread out before her. She had a certain talent for judging people, at least, according to her own standards. Today, she was to meet a candidate for a strategic position within the company. When he entered, his polite smile and impeccable attire could not mask the veil of prejudice that clouded Clara's mind. She immediately noted, in the back of her mind, his hesitation, not him. She thought, even before hearing his voice. The candidate, calm and confident, presented himself with assurance. But each question he answered, each idea he put forward, seemed to provoke increasing irritation in Clara. The decision was swift and decisive: he was not the appropriate candidate. She thanked him coldly and dispensed with any further consideration. As the candidate stood up to leave, a flash of truth dawned. With a measured gesture, he pulled out his business card and declared, with a smile that made Clara's world tremble, "Actually, I'm Marcus Williams, the son of the founder and principal investor of your company." Clara's blood ran cold. Her eyes widened, her cheeks paled, and her body stiffened. Everything she thought she knew about power and control crumbled in an instant. The candidate she had just rejected was the one who held the keys to her professional future. In the heavy silence, Marcus stepped forward calmly and added, "It seems we have some things to review, don't you think?" Clara's perfect and supposedly just world had just cracked, and that crack would never be closed. Clara Whitman felt invincible that morning. A manager for 10 years, she was used to deciding who succeeded and who failed in her company. Every candidate had passed through her merciless scrutiny, and she never let anyone impress her. She believed she knew people just by observing them for a few minutes. Marcus Williams entered the hall with a calm, almost measured gait. He wore a perfectly tailored dark gray suit and a polite smile. But Clara, lost in her own prejudices, saw only what she wanted to see: a young black man, clearly ambitious, but in her eyes, unsuitable. The interview process began. Clara asked standard questions about Marcus's experience, skills, and strategic vision. He answered precisely, articulating his ideas clearly and confidently. Each answer should have impressed Clara, but her mind was closed. She was evaluating his appearance, his tone of voice, his attitude, not his talent. After 20 minutes, Clara made a hasty decision. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Williams," she said coldly, avoiding his eyes. "Unfortunately, we cannot accept your application." Marcus nodded calmly, stood up, and headed for the door. Clara allowed herself a smile of quiet satisfaction. She believed she had protected the company from a candidate who, in her opinion, was not a good fit. But as he extended his hand to greet her, he pulled out a business card. Clara frowned, intrigued, but wasn't expecting anything special. "I think you might want to take a look at this," Marcus said with an enigmatic smile. Clara took the card and read. "Marcus Williams, son of the founder and main investor in the company." Clara's heart stopped. Her eyes widened, her hands trembled. All the power she thought she possessed, all her sure judgment, had just collapsed in an instant. Marcus, ever calm, simply said, "It seems we have a lot to discuss, Clara." For the first time in her career, Clara felt fear overwhelm her. She had judged too quickly, and it was going to cost her dearly. The next day, Clara Whitman woke up with a strange feeling, as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. She had spent the night replaying every detail of the interview, every word, every gesture. How could she have failed to see Marcus's true identity? How could she have let her prejudices cloud her judgment? The news was already circulating at the company. Several employees had learned that the rejected candidate from the previous day was none other than Marcus Williams, son of the founder and principal investor. Murmurs and knowing glances multiplied behind her back. Clara felt the weight of everyone's judgment on her shoulders. Marcus quickly called a meeting with her in his office. Clara entered, her heart pounding, trying to hide her nervousness behind her usual mask of coldness. Marcus looked at her with an almost defiant calm. "Clara, I've reviewed your decision from yesterday," he said softly, but firmly. "I'd like to understand your reasoning." Clara took a deep breath. She wanted to defend herself, to justify her choice, but no words came out. Excuses seemed ridiculous in the face of the simple and merciless truth. She had let herself be guided by her prejudices. Marcus continued, his gaze piercing, "I noticed that your decision wasn't based on skills or experience. Am I wrong?" Clara felt her throat tighten. She hated the idea of being confronted with her mistakes, but Marcus was right. She had failed to judge a man for who he truly was. The consequences were immediate. Marcus decided to personally oversee all future hiring. Clara, whose authority largely rested on his selection decisions, suddenly found herself marginalized. The previously submissive employees began to see her in a new light, no longer as an untouchable director, but as a woman overwhelmed by her own biases. That evening, as she left the office, Clara felt vulnerable for the first time. Her world, which she had thought solid and predictable, was crumbling. And she knew that Marcus, calm and determined, wouldn't let her mistakes go unpunished. Clara Whitman sat at her desk, her hands gripping her pen tightly. Since the meeting with Marcus, every decision she made seemed to be under scrutiny. Even her most loyal staff now watched her every move with caution, as if she had become fallible. Marcus, for his part, showed no signs of aggression. On the contrary, he cultivated an almost unsettling calm, like a predator observing its prey. A few days after the incident, he summoned Clara for another meeting, but this time it was not an interview or an administrative discussion. "Clara," he said, gently closing the door behind her, "I want you to understand the importance of your decisions. Your prejudices almost cost this company dearly." Clara lowered her eyes, unable to find an excuse. But Marcus didn't stop there. He took out a folder and placed it on the desk. "Look at this. These are the key projects I had planned to entrust to you, but your hasty judgment has jeopardized their implementation." She reviewed the file, and each page was a stark reminder of her mistakes, missed partnerships, rejected strategic recruitments, lost opportunities. Every decision, influenced by her biases, had left its mark. "I'm giving you a chance, Clara," Marcus continued, his gaze piercing. "A chance to prove you can overcome your judgments. But know this, the slightest mistake will be irreversible." Clara felt a simmering anger rising within her. She had always believed she was in control, but now she understood that Marcus held the true power. Fear mingled with humiliation, and for the first time in years, she felt vulnerable and exposed. This confrontation marked a turning point. Clara had to choose: continue ignoring her biases and risk losing everything she had built, or accept the lesson, evolve, and relearn how to lead without prejudice. But accepting this reality meant publicly admitting her mistakes, an almost insurmountable task for someone like her. As Marcus left the office, his last word echoed. "I believe in your potential, if you know how to look beyond appearances." Clara remained alone, her heart pounding, aware that her professional life had just changed drastically, and that nothing would ever be the same again. Clara Whitman spent the night thinking. Marcus's words echoed in her head like a constant replay: look beyond appearances. She knew this was her last chance to restore her reputation and prove that she could lead without being guided by her prejudices. The next morning, Marcus was waiting for him in the conference room, surrounded by several company executives. This was no ordinary meeting. Several complex files were spread out on the table, each representing a key project or strategic partnership. "Clara," Marcus said calmly, "today I'm going to give you a task that will test your true judgment, your ability to see competence first and foremost, and not your prejudices." He pointed to a specific file. "Here's a project you probably would have rejected if you judged the candidate on appearances. It involves recruiting a new manager for the most critical department in our company. You must choose the manager yourself from these 3 candidates." Clara felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. She examined the profiles, Each candidate had impressive skills, but one of them, a young black man named Jamal Carter, seemed, in her opinion, unusual for the position. Clara closed her eyes for a moment, remembering Marcus's lesson. She knew she had to overcome her instincts and judge the candidates solely on their talent and vision. After much deliberation, she made a bold decision. She chose Jamal Carter. Not because he fit a preconceived image, but because his project and vision were clearly superior. Marcus looked at her, a barely perceptible smile on his lips. "Very well, Clara. Let's see if your actions match your words." In the days that followed, Jamal proved to be an exceptional asset to the company, exceeding all expectations and inspiring the teams. Clara then realized that her prejudices had almost cost her not only her credibility, but also the company's success. This ordeal transformed Clara. She understood that true power did not come from rank or title, but from the ability to judge fairly, with humility and an open mind. She began to reevaluate all her past decisions, aware that her path to redemption had just begun. However, Marcus wasn't done with the surprises. He knew Clara needed to be tested once again, in an area where prejudice and pride were even more dangerous. And he was ready to push her to her limits. Weeks passed, and Clara Whitman had changed. She was no longer the arrogant, condescending manager. She listened to her employees, assessed skills without prejudice, and made thoughtful decisions. But Marcus knew that one last test was needed to seal his transformation. One Friday afternoon, he summoned her to his office. Clara entered, ready to face what he had planned. On the desk, a thick file awaited her. "Clara," Marcus said calmly, "this is your final test. You must personally manage a major conflict between two teams. One of them is challenging the competence of a key member, and the situation threatens to derail a critical project. You must make a decision and defend it before the board." Clara felt the weight of responsibility, but this time she gave in neither to pride nor prejudice. She studied every file, spoke with every member of both teams, and listened to their arguments impartially. She chose to support Jamal Carter, the young manager she had recruited in the previous round, despite pressure from several influential executives. At the council meeting, Clara spoke confidently, explaining her choices, her reasons, and her objective assessment. Her clarity, honesty, and ability to recognize everyone's strengths impressed everyone, including the most skeptical members. Marcus, sitting at the back of the room, observed in silence. Then, when the meeting ended, he approached her. "Clara," he said with a slight smile, "you have learned what many refuse to understand. True leadership is not measured by your power or status, but by your ability to see people as they are and let them shine." Clara felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She knew she had failed once, but she had managed to get back up, learn from her mistakes, and become a better leader. "Thank you, Marcus," she murmured, "for showing me the truth, and for giving me a chance to change." Marcus nodded, satisfied. Change always starts with oneself. And you did it. That day, Clara understood that her greatest challenge had never been running a business, but overcoming her own prejudices. And in that moment of redemption, she knew that no business card or title would ever again define her worth.